Hello everyone, and welcome back. It's been a little bit, but we are once again reviewing some Pokemon VGC matches in Regulation G. This is going to be the start of all of our EUIC recasting and recoverage, and we're going to get into it because we're starting at round number 1. We have a lot to go. Round number 1 features a matchup between Robbie Schaaij and Marco Silva. Marco Silva is a pretty well-known player, a very successful player. Robbie, I have personally not heard of much, but likely has played in quite a few tournaments. And we have two pretty standard teams here, but there are some interesting differences. Calyrex Shadow Rider notably is running Expanding Force alongside a female Indeedee to set Psychic Terrain. We don't see this super often. It is a known pairing. It is something people certainly can be ready for, but it's not all that common and a little bit of a spin on the traditional Calyrex Hyper Offense build. We also have Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. Again, not the most popular Ogerpon. Personally, I love Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. That rock typing can absolutely come in clutch. The Ivy Cudgels with an increased critical hit rate up against things like Incineroars and Tornaduses can do some work. We have Whimsicott for the speed control, as well as Light Screen and Encore for the other utility moves, and then just a really standard Urshifu Rapid Strike with Focus Sash. Pretty strong offensive pairing with the Calyrex and the Urshifu. The rest are mostly supporting cast, but Ogerpon and Incineroar can both also do damage. Now, Marco's team has some absolute heaters here, no pun intended. We have the bulkier Terapagos set. Sometimes you see the choice specs. This has the leftovers Terra Starstorm, substitute Calm Mind, aiming to heal up, take a lot of advantage of that Terra Shell ability. Rillaboom to set the grassy terrain. That interaction with the Indeedee is going to be very important throughout this series. Incineroar as well, and a Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. Again, big fan here. But then we also have a Screamtail with Booster Energy. It has Encore as well as Disable, Protect, and Play Rough. A very interesting Pokemon, provides a lot of very fun utility, not something that's super common. And then Heatran is also on this team. Heavy Slam, Earth Power, Magma Storm, and Protect. You do not see Heatran very often these days. That said, things like Earth Power and Magma Storm can do some numbers into things like Zacian and Zamazenta. Earth Power great against Miraidon, and Heatran has been, over the course of VGC history, a very storied Pokemon. Flash Fire making immune to Fire type moves from a Koraidon potentially, and Citrus Berry making it a little bit bulkier. Its Fairy typing gives it a lot of neutrals to a lot of the things that would hit it for super effective damage, notably things like a Ground type move that we see a decent amount of Earth Powers, High Horsepowers here and there across the board. But for Marco, this is a much bulkier team, going to be a lot slower. It doesn't have a lot of speed control, but there's no trick room really to set up. Going to be relying a lot on those fake outs, which means Rillaboom is going to have to come in to get rid of that Psychic Terrain that Indeedee sets. Now, that said, if you're looking at teams in terms of what's standard and what looks like is going to be a little bit more favored here, Robbie's team seems a little bit easier to pilot. For Marco, a lot of this is going to be about protecting that Terapagos and keeping it in good spots. Heatran might have a place here, but it doesn't really do anything special that the other members of the team don't do. Another thing to note, Whimsicott with Light Screen kind of blocks off most of the major damage that Marco has on the team with the Terapagos and with the Heatran. Coming into this first round, though, we are seeing a Calyrex and an Incineroar on the side of Robbie, and a Terapagos and Incineroar on the side of Marco. Incineroar plus a restricted, it's a tried and true combo. Incineroar is busted. Both of these restricteds are busted. We're going to have to see who goes where. Notably, Marco cannot fake out into the Shadow Rider, so this might be a little bit of a test to see which Incineroar is faster. If Marco's Incineroar is faster, that could be pretty big. Neither of these have Covert Cloak, but the items are different. Now, of course, Robbie can fake out into the Terapagos if they want to. That will dismantle the Terra Shell, but a Calm Mind could get set up here. Terapagos is immune to the Ghost type Astral Barrage coming out of Shadow Rider Calyrex, so that'll keep it pretty stable and pretty strong. It's mainly going to be worried about that Expanding Force if an Indeedee comes in, but even so, Terra Shell is still a phenomenally strong ability. If you know what multi-scale is, it's the same dang thing. So, if you're Robbie here, you could go for the damage, but if you take the risk and your Incineroar isn't faster, then your Incineroar is going to get stunned. You're not going to be able to do too much damage to either of these Pokemon back, but the risk comes through, and Robbie's Incineroar is faster, or at the very least, wins the speed tie. Nasty Plot comes out of the Calyrex. This just might be a double setup turn with both the Incineroars taking chip damage. That Rocky Helmet on Marcos Yeah, on Marco's Incineroar coming in clutch, and we just see a nasty plot from the Shadow Rider Calyrex and a Calm Mind coming out of the Terapagos. This is as equal as a turn as you could possibly get from these two. And if anything, Robbie's Incineroar took more damage than Marco's. So once again, Astral Barrage here, it's going to go into an Incineroar that resists it. It's going to go into a special defense boosted Calm Mind. That said, it is Nasty Plot. Nasty Plot is pretty strong. It is pretty scary here. But this Terapagos can start doing some pretty scary stuff as well if it does want to go ahead and Terrasilize. It certainly doesn't have to. It can go for Substitute. We could see Marco rotate out this Incineroar and bring in a Rillaboom. But going into this turn, Robbie goes for the Protect here, keeping the Shadow Rider Calyrex nice and topped off. And another Calm Mind coming from Marco Silva. This Terapagos is now at +2 special attack and +2 special defense. This thing is getting very, very scary. Parting Shot coming out here goes into Marco's Incineroar as well, giving this Terapagos free reign to keep setting up. Incineroar is going to swap out here. We saw already that Robbie selected that Urshifu, or was thinking about that Urshifu, not selected it, but is selecting it here. The Urshifu is going to come in. Marco's Incineroar is going to be the last thing on the field to move, and it is going to be Parting Shot into the Urshifu here. That is actually huge. Now, Surging Strikes isn't going to be affected by that Intimidate, but Close Combat, U-Turn, Aqua Jet, any of those moves will be, although I'm pretty sure there's no U-Turn. I believe it is Detect as the final move on this Urshifu. For Marco now, you're deciding who to switch into here. Your Terapagos is still perfectly healthy, at full health. The main thing you're worried about is this Urshifu going for a Surging Strike. Intimidate doesn't matter. It's going to break through that Terra Shell on the first attack, and then it's going to be doing some pretty considerable damage. Urshifu is almost certainly going to be faster than this Terapagos, and since it has Focus Sash, even if Terapagos does go Terrasilize and go for a Terra Starstorm, Urshifu is still likely going to survive. And so we see the Rillaboom come out here. This either going to force the Urshifu to swap or press Detect. Rillaboom can still go for the Fake Out into the Urshifu, break the Focus Sash, or at least guarantee that this Urshifu is not going to be going for an attacking move this turn unless it's for something like an Aqua Jet. Now, for Marco, you have this Terapagos here that is very, very bulky, very, very strong. Obviously, you're facing down a +2 Shadow Rider, but your Terapagos is almost certainly stronger. It's not going to be gaining incrementally stronger attack boost as it knocks out Pokemon, but it doesn't need to. It's an incredibly powerful Pokemon, and Terra Starstorm does hecka damage. Robbie goes ahead, switches out the Urshifu, not wanting to sacrifice the Focus Sash or apply any damage. Incineroar comes out, and an Intimidate comes through. Like I said, wouldn't be surprised to see a Fake Out from the Rillaboom into that Urshifu that's now an Incineroar. But Terapagos goes for Protect. Both these players are playing this game one very, very slow, very conservative. We do see the Astral Barrage come out. This Rillaboom does have Assault Vest. It is +2. This is going to be a lot of damage one way or another. And notably, we didn't see Fake Out. Astral Barrage comes through. It takes Rillaboom, Assault Vest, bulky Rillaboom. Yeah, we don't know if it's bulky, but it probably is. Rillaboom down to less than a quarter of its HP. We see the U-Turn come out. It's switching out once again, and Marco gets to keep up this pretty threatening rotation, all things considered. Could bring his own Incineroar back out onto the battlefield here, and that is exactly what we see. Intimidate comes in. However, we now have this Terapagos who wouldn't have been affected by the Astral Barrage in the previous turn, but now is threatened by this Fake Out. There's a chance it can't move, but it cannot protect this turn. Its damage is absolutely being threatened here. Even since this Calyrex is now essentially neutral against this Terapagos, Expanding Force is still going to do as much damage as it would have on the first turn of the game. We're in a very, very similar spot. This Terapagos is just slightly stronger. It's more powerful on the special attack side, but this turn, that really doesn't matter unless both these players go for some absolutely crazy calls. We already know Robbie's Incineroar is faster here, and it's going to go ahead and break that Terra Shell. At the end of this turn, if we see some trickery come into play, we could see that get healed up, but the Expanding Force is going to come through, and it takes the Terapagos down to below half HP. We are going to see an attack come out, or we're not going to see an attack come out of it because it was already flinched. This Incineroar is going to go for a Parting Shot on the Calyrex. It's going to put it down to just a +1, and it's going to get another chance to switch out. I mean, I think we're just going to keep seeing this Fake Out blender, as the phenomenal Wolfie VGC called it. We see Marco Silva thinking in that camera. If you haven't looked at this new setup here on the screen, the new HUD, as we like to call it, it looks pretty sweet. But these player cams, It's always exciting to see, and we actually see not a fake out user, but Ogerpon come out onto the field. Now, if you're Marco, you don't know exactly what the last Pokemon Robbie has, so there is a world where that could be the Indeedee, but if that's the case, you'll simply have to deal with it. You'll simply have to accept it. Terapagos is a little bit over half now, the leftovers healing plus the grassy terrain healing, giving it just a little bit more health. And since that parting shot came through onto the Calyrex, it's almost guaranteed to be able to survive whatever comes out, unless we see a knockoff or a Will-O-Wisp that burns it and maybe chips it down that little bit more at the end of the turn. So for Marco, you have to make the call here. Are you going to see the Indeedee, or should you just go for the Follow Me Terrasilize Terra Star Storm from this Terapagos? It's not really going to have an opportunity to get much stronger here without losing out on more turns where it could be attacking. If you're Marco, you have to start getting damage onto the field. So far, it has just been Rocky Helmet damage plus a U-turn that has done anything to any of Robbie's Pokemon so far. We see the Terrasilization come out. This is indeed going to be a Terrasilized Terapagos that is going to clear away the grassy terrain on this turn. We're not going to see any switch outs here. There are no fake outs. There is the opportunity, however, for a Protect out of the Calyrex. Astral Barrage comes through. It's not going to affect the Terapagos, but it's going to do a good chunk of damage to this Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. It can't KO it no matter what, but it does take it down to its sturdy. Phenomenal ability, and comes in pretty clutch here. Notably, it's going to be important to see where this Incineroar goes. If it even survives this, Rock-type Ivy Cudgel does a lot of damage, and the Terra Starstorm comes through. The Incineroar is not faster than Terapagos. This will take out the Incineroar at the very least. It could very well take out the Calyrex as well. This is a +2. It's a crit on the Incineroar. That didn't matter, but the Calyrex survives on 10 HP. That could be massive. Calyrex gets one more turn to wreak havoc onto Marco Silva's Pokemon. Robbie is down 1, but so far has a pretty decent advantage in terms of the outright power and the speed that he has on the field. Speed is absolutely huge, and we see another very, very speedy and very fast Pokemon here in Urshifu Rapid Strike. Terapagos got a little bit more health from Terrasilizing as well as that leftovers, but again, there is no more Terra Shell. It's going to be taking a ton of damage. Urshifu can throw in a ton of damage as well. This Calyrex is going to be faster, so it can throw out an Expanding Force or an Astral Barrage and take out the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. And Urshifu can go for super effective close combat onto the Terapagos, or it can go for Surging Strikes. Either one, it doesn't particularly matter here. We do see the Ogerpon get withdrawn, likely going back into the Incineroar to get an Intimidate out onto the Urshifu here. But again, Surging Strikes could be big. And if you're Robbie, you saw this play before, you know that Marco likes to bring out this Incineroar as soon as the Urshifu hits the battlefield, and that could just mean Surging Strikes into that slot. Terrasilization comes through into the Urshifu. It is Terra Stellar, so that means it's going to be doing even more damage with each individual attack type that it uses once each. A little complicated, I know. All you need to know, though, is that this Urshifu just got a lot stronger. We see another Expanding Force into the Terapagos, takes it down below half. Calyrex faints due to the Life Orb, which is notable, but it got one last attack off, a parting shot of its own, if you will. Post-combat going into the Terapagos here, that is going to take it out, but it is going to drop Urshifu's defenses. It cannot switch out, so these defense drops are going to stay on it for the rest of this game. Marco Silva has already Terrasilized, so these remaining 3 Pokemon cannot do so. Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is at 1 HP. Rillaboom and Incineroar, though, are still relatively healthy, and Rapid Strike Urshifu hates to see a Rillaboom coming. Robbie is going to bring out their last Pokemon. That is going to be the Whimsicott, as we saw before, which gives them the opportunity to apply some speed control. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. Urshifu is already faster than both the Pokemon on the battlefield, and it mainly has to worry about priority more than anything else. Marco doesn't go into the Rillaboom yet, instead brings out the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. This gives some redirection support for the Incineroar if it so chooses, or it gives an additional damage outlet. This is all going to come down to a read from Robbie, but Marco is in a very, very demanding position to close out this game with that Rillaboom sitting in the back. Whimsicott and Urshifu, I don't know if Whimsicott plus Urshifu alone can take out a Rillaboom in the back. That said, actually, now that I remember, Rillaboom is very, very low, but it does have that Assault Vest. Whimsicott's only attacking move is the Moonblast, and Whimsicott isn't exactly known for being able to do a ton of damage. Moonblast is a great move, but Whimsicott is much better as a supporting Pokemon. If you're Marco, I think the plan is to break the Focus Sash here on the Urshifu. That's what the fake out is for. It does exactly that. Urshifu can't move on this turn. Ivy Cudgel comes out, goes into the Whimsicott, does a lot of damage, but doesn't take it out. Whimsicott does get the chance to put some damage onto the Incineroar, but that leaves the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon on the battlefield for now. That is a special defense drop on the Incineroar, but I'm not sure it is going to matter. If you're Marco, you want to try to get knockout both of these Pokemon at the same time. You don't want to have Rillaboom plus another Pokemon you have to worry about on the battlefield. You're already going to have to worry about Fake Out. But as we saw with that damage, I just don't know if Marco Silva has enough going on to win this game. Both these Pokemon would need to go down in this turn. There would need to be a Detect. Whimsicott would also need to survive. That's a lot to ask. There are very, very many things that need to go right for Robbie here, and I'm not sure he can check all of the boxes. Part of it would come down to Marco likely making a misplay. And knowing Marco Silva, a phenomenal player, that is almost certainly not going to happen. We see this coming down all the way to time here. Robbie taking as much time as he can to make the next move. The Ivy Cudgel comes out into the Whimsicott, knocks it out. We're going to see the Urshifu move next. Whoever it takes out, it's not going to be able to take out both. Surging Strikes is going to land with critical hits, so that Intimidate isn't going to matter. The Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is the one that is going down. Rillaboom's going to come in. It has Fake Out pressure. Incineroar can go for a parting shot if it so chooses, or it can apply more damage onto the Urshifu, and then from there Rillaboom can just keep things going. We see the knockoff take about a quarter of HP off of the Urshifu. The Focus Sash gets knocked off, but it wasn't going to get used anyways. Rillaboom comes out, and that's all but going to seal Robbie's fate. Fake Out plus knockoff into a Grassy Glide plus knockoff on the next turn is simply going to wrap things up. Robbie has the opportunity to do a little scouting here, take some time to think about their game plan going into the next game. But again, unless we're looking for a miracle here, it is simply not going to happen. Fake Out comes through. We're going to see a knockoff again. It's going to do about 35 points of damage. Actually, we see the Will-O-Wisp here. Marco Silva, covering all the outs as best as possible. Urshifu gets burned. Physical damage getting halved, a little bit of recovery from the grassy terrain here, and this game, quite frankly, is just getting stalled out. There's going to be a little bit of chip damage from the burn, offsetting the grassy terrain recovery, but now if you are Marco, the adaptations going into game 2, I don't know how many adaptations Marco Silva needs to make. The Terapagos turns were really, really good. Being able to get those bulky Calm Mind moves were great. The Aqua Jet does absolutely nothing into this Rillaboom, and we see the Urshifu finally go down. And that is game number 1, going the way of Marco Silva. Now, if you're Robbie, those first few turns didn't feel terrible, but 2 turns of Calm Mind is always superior to 1 turn of Nasty Plot. And so trying to find a way to manage that, try to find a way to get rid of that Terapagos earlier so it cannot do as much damage, do as much spread move damage as it was allowed to do in game 1. I think that is key. I think that is important. Indeedee could be pretty relevant here. It can block Fake Out, which is very, very helpful. Unfortunately, it would block your own Fake Outs, breaking the Terra Shell, which is a pretty nice piece of utility, but we are going to have to see what the adaptations are in game number 2 for both of these players. We see Marco going for the exact same opening. We see both players, in fact, going for the exact same opening. Now, the question is, on that first turn, we saw Fake Outs from both the Incineroars and the buffing moves from both of these, both of these restricteds. If we see it again, I don't know if I'd be surprised if we see it again, but I think if you're Robbie, you have to go for something a little bit more exciting here. That said, you're up against a knockoff from this Incineroar. You saw it in the last turn, and we see Robbie already going for the Protect. Knockoff from Incineroar is very, very scary. That opening call in the previous game was a risk, and Robbie looks like they do not want to take it on this one. They bring the Whimsicott out here that gives them the opportunity to Encore into the Terapagos if they so choose. They can't Encore into the Incineroar as they are a Dark type. So Terapagos goes for the Calm Mind. It's the same thing that we saw on the first turn from Marco Silva from the Terapagos, but it looks like Robbie might have predicted it. The knockoff from the Incineroar going into the Calyrex gets protected, so Calyrex stays healthy, but does not get a Nasty Plot up on this turn. Oh, a little bit of a stream cut out there, but we are back in action. You know what? We'll just cast it half line. Now, we did see an Encore that, like I said, that can't target the Incineroar. If that's targeting the Terapagos, that will lock it in to Calm Minding for quite a while, which could give Robbie the opportunity to bring in a Rillaboom and start, or not Rillaboom, bring in an Urshifu and start doing a lot more damage. Urshifu doesn't care about Calm Mind stacks. It's a physical attacker. It does have to worry about Incineroar, but Incineroar is currently on the field. Now, Calyrex does still have to worry about knockoff. That hasn't gone away yet, but it looks like Marco is actually the first one to switch out there restricted, wanting to get rid of that Encore as fast as possible and bring Rillaboom out. Fake out pressure once again on the board and in play. Knockoff pressure hasn't gone away yet, though. Notably, it looks like Robbie is going to go ahead and Terrastalize. That is going to remove the 4-time super effective from the knockoff, but it does still leave that knockoff pressure available to get rid of that life orb. It is a Terra Dark type, so gives a little bit more resistance to the Calyrex. We see the Encore fail going into the Tropico slot, and the Nasty Plot comes through now on this turn. Special attack rises sharply. It's going to be a little bit offset by this knockoff coming through, but it's not very effective, and Calyrex stays pretty bulky. However, this does now leave Calyrex vulnerable to a fake out from the Rillaboom. Protect is almost mandatory now, but what is the call going to be? Marco knows that this Calyrex is threatened. This is where you get into that prediction game. This is where you get into the mind games. You could say, okay, well, let's take a risk, right? If this Calyrex doesn't protect, it gets hit with a fake out, gets hit with something else, or it simply can't move on this turn. So Robbie is almost certainly going to protect. So what if we go for something crazy? What if we go for a parting shot, a knockoff, a U-turn, or whatever, double up into that Whimsicott slot? It wouldn't be terrible to take out Whimsicott on this turn anyways. You're not super threatened by an Astral Barrage. Incineroar is incredibly bulky. Rillaboom has the Assault Vest, and it's not going to be it's not going to be nearly as strong of an Astral Barrage. It'll do a lot of damage, don't get me wrong. We saw the Rillaboom get really, really low in the previous game, but we'll have to see. The Protect comes out from the Calyrex here, again, guaranteeing no fake out, but guaranteeing it's also not going to do any damage, and there we go. We do get a call on the U-turn, but it is protected. No fake out, U-turn instead, but now we get the parting shot into the Urshifu, which isn't even going to be able to move this turn, and that means Marco could even bring in the Incineroar on the next turn to once again prep fake out pressure and throw down another Intimidate onto this Urshifu, which the Urshifu switches in against a Rillaboom who is still on the battlefield. Again, Grassy Glide pressure is huge here and absolutely terrifying. That said, Marco is not going to have fake out ready and available for this turn. He's going to have something else prepped and ready. Notably, bringing in the Tropicos makes Astral Barrage that much worse of an option. But right now, all we're seeing is smart switching. This Calyrex is almost healed all the way back up thanks to the grassy terrain that Marco Silva himself set. So this game is all about positioning. We saw it in the first game as well, and we see it now in this one. Both of these players are willing to sacrifice their boosts on their Pokemon in order to get better positioning overall in the game. We see the Urshifu swap out, Incineroar come in. Now, the question is, are we going to see Marco swap out, or did Marco call this? Did Marco make an interesting decision? We see the Rillaboom come out. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Incineroar come in, baby. Here we go. It's back. The fake out users are back on the board. And guess what? I feel like we're exactly where we were in game number 1, or at least in turn 1. We see the Terastallization come out. Marco is not even going for any boost this time. Who cares about Calm Mind? Who cares about the special defense and the special attack boost? We're going straight for the Terra Starstorm on both of these Pokemon. Terraform Zero comes in, the grass goes away from the battlefield, and now the Astral Barrage comes through. It doesn't affect the Tropicos. It's not very effective into the Incineroar. It is +2, so it does take it down to a little over half, but now we see the Terra Starstorm come out. It is not plus anything. This is just the base Terra Starstorm. It's going to do a decent chunk of damage and take Calyrex down to 3. That critical hit is absolutely massive. It will now go down to a fake out. It simply must protect. There is no more grassy terrain recovery for it. Incineroar only takes about 1/3 of its HP on Robbie's side. That makes it relatively healthy and keeps it effectively in this game. But once again, Robbie did not bring an Indeedee to this game. That Expanding Force is doing absolutely nothing. It cannot hit this Tropicos for a ton of damage. Notably, even if he wanted to use it to hit both Pokemon, he still can't. Tropicos plus Incineroar seems to be a pretty solid check to Shadow Rider Calyrex, quite frankly. You can't hit it. You can't hit the Incineroar with a psychic move. You can't hit Tropicos with a ghost type move. I almost said shadow type move, but it's the same difference. So once again, this Calyrex is under fake out pressure. You could go for the fake out, but Marco is saying, nah, you're going to protect. You're going to try to keep your Shadow Rider Calyrex, which notably won't go down to life orb damage this time. Brings in the Rillaboom, repreps some fake out pressure here, leaves that fake out pressure on the battlefield, and we see an Astral Barrage come out again. No switching here, no protecting, no playing safe. Rillaboom goes down to about a third of its HP. The no life orb boost there, not making sure it does a little bit less damage. And then we see once again a Terra Starstorm Incineroar taking another third of its HP about. It looks like it could potentially survive one more Terra Starstorm, but it might not even get that opportunity with the Rillaboom on the battlefield. Knockoff comes through, it takes away Rillaboom's Assault Vest, but at this point, that doesn't matter all that much. Rillaboom is down to about 20% of its total HP. Robbie is going to bring in this Whimsicott here, but right now, this Terapagos is sitting very, very pretty. We do know that the Urshifu is in the back. That is certainly a threat, but Marco has Incineroar still. Those Intimidates and Fake Outs are continuously cycling. Marco has absolutely no problem with keeping those in use and making sure he's getting maximum effectiveness out of this Fake Out blender. Whimsicott could set up Tailwind. Light Screen here could be pretty big. That would make sure that this Incineroar can maybe survive not just 2, but maybe 3 Astral or maybe 3 Terra Starstorms with Grassy Terrain recovery. That could be important in the rest of the game. But once again, with this Shadow Rider Calyrex down, it's going to make things very, very difficult for Robbie. That is a Rillaboom down, which notably that's the biggest check that Marco had to the Urshifu, but Incineroar still exists, quite frankly. This Terra Starstorm is going to do even more damage, and with a critical hit again, that's the third critical hit from Marco, but this might be the only one that really and truly mattered. That said, I am surprised Robbie did not set up a Light Screen, was more worried about taking down that Rillaboom on this turn. But with the Incineroar fallen, Robbie is in a very tough spot. The thing is, for Robbie, even if he does set up Light Screen there, the critical hit makes sure that it doesn't matter anyways. And now Robbie has a chance to see what Marco's last Pokemon is. Once again, it could be that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, and if that's the case, a Follow Me here is just going to be absolutely gutting. That's exactly what we see. This Urshifu isn't even going to get a chance to target down this Terapagos, at least on this first turn. The Tailwind coming through, if you're Robbie, you're already faster. You don't need to set the Tailwind. Your Pokemon are already going to be speedier than what Marco has on the board. Cornerstone Ogerpon and Terapagos aren't the slowest Pokemon in the world by any means, but you don't need to set up Tailwind. Urshifu is so speedy. Whimsicott's best stat is their speed stat, so it's going to come down to what can Robbie make happen? Can Robbie figure out a way to take advantage of this Terapagos? But we see the Ivy Cudgel come through. It deletes the Whimsicott. It takes out its remaining HP. The close combat's going to come through. It's going to do a lot of damage, but the Terastallization has already been used, so there is not going to be a Terra Stellar from the Urshifu. Image cuts out slightly one more time, but with the special defense drop, this Terra Starstorm is going to chew through Urshifu's remaining defenses here. It is now a single target move. It's going to absolutely obliterate this Pokemon. It goes down to its Focus Sash, and all that is left is simply the formalities. We could see a Detect here, but for Robbie, this set is all wrapped up, and Marco Silva is almost, can never be certain, is almost certainly going to take home this series. And there we go. Robbie throws in the towel, thinks about clicking Detect, but takes it out. And we see Marco Silva winning round 1 of EUIC. This was a pretty resounding victory for Marco here. Great use of pivoting. We saw it's not the most thrilling gameplay. It's not the most exciting gameplay when you just see fake out, U-turn, parting shot, switches, fake outs. It's quite simple, but it's very, very effective. And we saw there, it gave Terapagos the ability to set up. We saw a very, very efficient and good check to Shadow Rider Calyrex, which is a very big threat in the metagame in the form of just having Terapagos and Incineroar on the battlefield. Expanding Force can't hit one, Astral Barrage can't hit the other, and they're both very, very bulky. Marco Silva goes 1-0 up in the bracket. But we're going to keep reviewing these VODs and keep reviewing these videos, so stick around if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.